The silence inside the Galactic Council dome was unnatural, thick, expectant. Light shimmered across obsidian pillars, and holographic sigils of 1,000 races hovered midair. Delegates shifted nervously in their floating seats. Even the air itself, scrubbed and ionized by machines older than most civilizations, seemed to hold its breath. Admiral Kalen Reese stood alone on the central disk. Jet-black Terran armor clung to him like a second skin, the crimson crest of Earth glowing faintly on his chest. His posture was rigid, like a statue carved from defiance. Behind him, no entourage, no translator, no AI liaison. Just silence. High Executor Vorth Kazareth, the three-eyed, gold-robed Ixari leader of the council, leaned forward in his elevated seat. His voice cut through the stillness, oily and amused. Admiral Reese, Earth was not invited to speak today. State your purpose or vacate. Reese's gaze swept across the chamber. So many species, so many smug faces, wrapped in comfort and bureaucracy. Their peace had come at a cost, but not one they had paid. I stand here, he said calmly, as authorized representative of the Terran Confederacy. Murmurs rippled. In accordance with Clause 17 of the Council Accords, Terra hereby declares a state of war. The chamber exploded. Voices rose in shock, disbelief, outrage. A few delegates stood. One shrieked. Another collapsed. Alarms flickered red at the rim of the dome. Vorth's chair slammed down from its hovering perch as he rose, seething. Outrageous. There's been peace for 2.5 millennia. You cannot. We can, Reese interrupted, and we just did. He turned and walked off the central disk as the room descended into chaos. Terran war protocols activated across every fleet. The countdown had begun. 3 days earlier, back on Terra Prime, the underground war chamber beneath Mount Erebus was lit by concentric blue rings. Screens hovered silently over a circular conference table. Around it sat 8 of Earth's highest-ranking officials. President Elian stood in the center, aging but alert, her tone grave. They killed them, Kalen, she said, tapping the floating image. 200,000 colonists on Norvis. 6. Gone. No trace. A recording played. Grainy, decrypted footage from a captured probe. Zelari warships. Council-sanctioned. Sweeping low over human outpost. Plasma lances. Civilian structures evaporating. Screams, then static. They erased everything, Reese muttered. Why? Elian paused. Because Norvis was too close to their experimental sphere. And we weren't supposed to know. But we did. This footage came at a price. I assume diplomacy failed. Elian looked at him. Pain etched into her features. We sent it to the council. Vorth refused to acknowledge it. Claimed fabrication. 3 allied systems backed his claim. They buried the incident. Reese clenched his jaw. They think we're still afraid. No, they think we've grown soft. Reese looked around the table. No one spoke. No one objected. He tapped the tabletop once. A coded signal flashed red. Operation Reckoning Protocol. Activated. By the time Reese returned to his command vessel TCS Revenant, Earth's fleet was already in motion. Deep space stealth cruisers silently disengaged from asteroid bases. Quantum encryption relays lit up the inner systems. Ground divisions mobilized beneath the auroras of Titan and Europa. And above Mars, a new kind of weapon rose from the dry dock. One never disclosed to the Council. On the bridge of the Revenant, his command AI, Nix, spoke. Admiral, hyperspace jump calculations ready. The fleet awaits your mark. Reese stared out at the stars beyond the transparent viewport. The galaxy was vast. The Council thought humanity was still tethered by guilt from the epic of blood. They hadn't seen what Earth had become, had adapted into, had waited for. Begin Phase 1, he ordered. We start at the source. Confirmed, Nix replied. Target, Zelari Sector HQ, Orbital Platform Sundar Prime. Reese nodded. No survivors. Back in the Council Dome, the chaos was still unfolding. He's bluffing, Vorth bellowed. Earth can't win this alone. But in the dark corners of the chamber, some delegates said nothing. The Drilii ambassador tapped a hidden panel beneath his seat. The Trakan representative, the only reptilian species to survive human hand-to-hand combat during the ancient wars, watched the holographic replay of the Norvis massacre with slitted eyes and clenched fists. And in the lowest seat, the diminutive, insectoid Freck ambassador whispered through his translator pod. The Terrans waited. We thought them asleep, but perhaps they were sharpening their teeth. Meanwhile, aboard Revenant, Reese entered the armory. His command armor sealed around him, magnetic locks hissing shut. He picked up a relic from Earth's darker past, a steel-bladed combat knife. Obsolete by most standards, but symbolic. Commander Vesta, his second-in-command, stepped beside him. Do you think they understand what's coming? Reese shook his head. They forgot who we are, but they will remember. The war wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And across the galaxy, ships began to vanish, not in explosions, but in silent shadows. Human fleets didn't announce themselves. They arrived as whispers, as consequences. The long peace had made the stars feel safe. But peace, Reese knew, was a blanket stretched too thin across a bed of knives. And humanity had just decided to pull it off. The Council Dome had never seen panic, not real panic, in over 2,000 years. But now, chaos clung to every corner like oil to water. Delegates shouted across the amphitheater, their translators struggling to keep up. A blue fog of overlapping holograms filled the chamber. Projections of emergency orders, threat assessments, and fleet tracking updates swirling overhead like a storm no one could stop. At the highest tier, High Executive Vorth Kazareth gripped the edge of his seat. His three eyes glared at the space where Reese had stood just hours earlier. Silence, he snapped, his voice amplified by the chamber core. This farce ends now. Humanity cannot act unilaterally. This is an act of terrorism. They presented proof, rasped the Drilii delegate, his crystalline skin reflecting red emergency lights. That colony, Norvis 6, it did go dark. Their footage, fabricated. Vorth cut him off. Their history is violence. They forge excuses like they build weapons. They also build allies, murmured the insectoid Freck ambassador. Heads turned. The Freck rarely spoke in full meetings. The Terran fleet sent encrypted communiques to 8 minor systems overnight. You think they're acting alone? Another murmur rippled through the council. Delegates glanced nervously at their advisors. Quiet whispers turned to heated side discussions. Vorth activated the emergency override. A massive star map flickered to life above them. Glowing red markers blinked across 3 sectors. Zelari space. All Zelari outposts had gone silent within the last 6 hours. They've already struck, Vorth growled. This isn't diplomacy. It's a declaration of annihilation. On the outer rim of Virex sector, inside the Terran stealth cruiser Spectre, Lieutenant Darrow intercepted a new Council transmission. The crew watched from the comms bay as the Council broadcast flickered into focus. We, the United Galactic Council, Vorth's voice echoed across the void, formally condemned Terra's unilateral act of aggression, effective immediately. Earth is to be considered in breach of interstellar treaty and hereby designated a rogue system. Darrow exhaled slowly. That didn't take long. Captain Reyes didn't flinch. They're scared, which means Reese was right. On the screen, a second voice chimed in unexpectedly. We object. It was Ambassador Lele of the Thou, a minor aquatic race. Peaceful, unarmed. They were also the first to break ranks. Terra showed us proof, Lele said. Undeniable logs. The Norvis massacre wasn't human propaganda. The Council covered it up. Vorth's face twisted. You would side with them? You risk war. We risk the truth, she replied, then cut the transmission. Reyes leaned forward. One spark. Enough to light the rest, Darrow muttered. Back in the dome, Vorth slammed his staff against the floor. Energy rippled through the lower rings. We are the arbiters of peace, he declared. Let no one forget, I am activating Article 13. Deploy peace enforcers. Begin containment. Article 13 had only been used twice in galactic history. Both times ended in species-level collapses. "Containment!" echoed the Track and War representative, his forked tongue tasting the air. "Contain humans? You might as well contain fire in a dry forest. Let them burn, then," Vorth hissed. Within hours, 10,000 peacekeeper vessels began mobilizing, but they were slow, scattered, built for show, not war. Meanwhile, Earth's fleet struck silently and surgically. In the deep reaches of Zelari space, the orbital station Sundar Prime floated lifeless. Its outer hull bore no marks, no debris field. Yet inside, every system was dead. Crew missing, lights dark, no signs of battle. A message was left in its Central Command Core. Justice does not ask permission. In Terra's Central Command Spire, President Elyon sat before a massive tactical interface. Blue markers blinked. Earth fleets, systems holding. No losses. Yet, Admiral Reese appeared via LiveLink, seated aboard Revenant. His voice was calm, efficient. "We've taken 4 key outposts. Minimal resistance. No retaliation yet. The Council is scrambling." Elyon leaned forward. "They've deployed peacekeepers. They're 2 decades behind in propulsion tech and 30 in tactics. No match." She paused. "And the backlash? They labeled us rogue." A long silence stretched between them. "Good. Reset at last. Now we don't have to play nice." Meanwhile, in the private inner sanctums of the Galactic Council, Vorth convened with the Triumvirate, a secretive group of power brokers beyond public knowledge. Not even the full council knew of their existence. "They move faster than projected," Vorth said. "Earth wasn't supposed to act." One of the Triumvirate, a featureless hologram shaped like flowing light, responded. "You underestimated their memory. The peace made you forget." Vorth seethed. They were bound by treaty. They were watching, learning, preparing. And now, the light being said coldly, "You answer for your arrogance, or we all will." In the depths of the Rim colonies, the first wave of council-loyal systems started defecting. Protests erupted. Delegates resigned. Whispers of an old Terran saying resurfaced among the stars. They only look weak until they strike. Inside the Revenant, Reese stood in front of a star map showing the entire Epsilon arm. Several systems blinked gold, neutral, undecided. Others red, hostile, but more and more turned blue. Vest approached. New message from the Thal ambassador. They've gone public with their support. And she paused. "The Tracken want to meet." Reese raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. They hated us 2,000 years ago. They respected us," he corrected. "Big difference." Vesta folded her arms. "You think they'll join us?" "No," Reese said, turning back to the map. "They'll wait to see if we win. Then they'll beg to stand behind us." Across the galaxy, the illusion of unity cracked. For the first time in millennia, the Council's authority trembled, not because of warships or weapons, but because a lie of peace had been exposed. And Earth didn't need permission anymore. They had history. They had proof. And now they had momentum. The silence before the strike was absolute. Orbiting in the dark umber of a dead moon, the TCS Revenant and her sister ships waited like predators before the lunge. Hulls coated in adaptive nanocarbon, they drifted invisible to every scanner. Not a pulse, not a ripple, just death in waiting. Ahead of them, the Zelari military stronghold, Orbital Command Sundar Prime, hung above the gas giant Tura V, a fortified bastion once thought impenetrable. It projected arrogance. Even now, its shields pulsed faintly like a heartbeat that was about to stop. Inside the Revenant, Admiral Reese stood over the hollow table. Blue outlines marked enemy ship placements, patrol rotations, internal security pulses. Their weakness wasn't structural. It was psychological. "They've grown comfortable," he said. "Predictable." Vesta nodded. "Cycle delay on their Nord patrol is exactly 16 seconds. Every single orbit." Reese didn't look surprised. "Execute the breach plan. Use the Vanish protocol." She hesitated for a beat. "That's total systems wipe. We won't get prisoners." We don't need prisoners. We need a message. The strike began with no warning. One moment. Sindar Prime sensors recorded silence. The next, internal lighting across all 5 rings flickered, then blacked out entirely. Communications failed mid-sentence. All defense turrets lost tracking and reset to 0. Then the outer airlocks depressurized without warning. Every single one. Emergency klaxon screamed, but no one knew where the breach was. By the time panic gripped the command deck, Terran infiltration units were already inside, moving like ghosts through the shadows, silent, fast, lethal. Their armor refracted light. Their weapons made no sound. One by one, control hubs were cut. No alarms reached the Council. No help was sent. Risa's voice echoed from a hidden transmitter into the enemy command bridge. This is not revenge. This is exposure. Back on Revenant, Commander Vesta monitored the live feeds as her operators fed in footage from microdrones. Zelari commanders in panic, unable to even locate the breach. 2 minutes to total system collapse, her ops chief reported. Minimal resistance. Another said, they weren't ready for asymmetry. No one is, Vesta muttered. She tapped into the station's central archive. A few keystrokes and centuries of hidden data were being siphoned. Council communications, classified orders, troop movements, and sealed records on Norvis 6. Exactly what they came for. Reese entered the comms bay as the final subroutine triggered. Is the echo code in place? He asked. Yes, sir. Once we withdraw, the station will auto-broadcast its internal logs to every channel in a 50-light-year radius. He nodded. Let them hear the truth from their own mouths. He stared out the viewport. Already, the core of Sindar Prime was beginning to glow, not from damage, but from exposure. The Terran breach teams had infected the station's AI with a logic virus, one that turned every screen, every system, into a confessional mirror. We were ordered by Council authority to cleanse the colony. No traces, no witnesses. Zelari Admiral, internal memo. Earth's expansion must be checked before it becomes another war epic. Vorth Kazareth. Classified directive. Proof. Not vengeance. Just proof. When the Revenant jumped to slipspace, Sindar Prime was already eating itself. A shell of its former pride. The news hit the galaxy in waves. First came silence, then disbelief. The Council scrambled to block the transmissions. But it was too late. Every subspace comms buoy within range had already mirrored and relayed the data. The Zelari genocide order was out. So was the Council's cover-up. Across neutral systems, protests erupted. On the desert world of Silicos, the people stormed the Council embassy. On the water planet Zel, thousands chanted the same phrase in every tongue. They were right. Earth was right. In the Grand Chamber, Vorth Kazera stood before a fractured council. Lies, he roared, slamming his 3-clawed fist into the obsidian rail. Human manipulation. Deepfakes, neural imprints. No, said the Drilii ambassador coldly. We verified the signal. The timestamp, the encryption signatures, it all checks. Vorth spun to him. You would believe them over us? They showed us what you didn't. That speaks louder than titles. One by one, delegates turned their heads from Vorth. One by one, they fell into silence. And then came a new voice. I'm moved to revoke high executor status, said the Freck ambassador. Gasps followed. It had begun. Back aboard the Revenant. Reese stood in his quarters staring at the mission report. Clean extraction. 0 casualties. 123 Zelari officers terminated. Every log uploaded. Every file time-stamped. But it wasn't the numbers that mattered. It was a ripple effect. Sir, Vesta said, entering. The Arathel system just declared neutrality. 2 more Council species have open back-channel communication. Which ones? Zarn Coalition and the Trakin Consulate. Reese turned to face her. The Trakin? She nodded. They say they want a conversation. He allowed himself the faintest smile. Send them the raw files. Let them see the whole archive. No edits. No spin. You trust them? No. But I trust what fear does to opportunists. Elsewhere in deep Council space, Vor stood alone in the Hall of Verdicts, walls covered in ancient laws etched by civilizations now extinct. He placed a hand on the stone of concordance, breathing heavily. Behind him, his aide whispered, "The humans did what we feared." "No," Vorth said, voice hollow. "They did what we hoped they'd forgotten." He stared at the darkness. "But they remember." The galaxy watched the fall of Sundar Prime on a loop. It wasn't the destruction that shocked them. It was the silence before. The efficiency, the precision, the realization that humanity hadn't changed. They just waited. The encrypted transmission came at 0400 Terran Standard. It bypassed every known Council relay, piggybacking on an obsolete pulsar beacon. When it reached the TCS Revenant, it carried a voice not heard in Terran ears for centuries. "Admiral Reese, this is Counselor Nadrin of the Trakin Consulate. I request parley, alone, unrecorded, and beyond Council reach." Reese listened twice. The Trakin were predators, ancient and proud. They didn't beg, and they never flinched. The fact that one was reaching out now, after centuries of mutual distrust, meant the cracks in the Council had become fractures. "Accept it," Reese told Vesta. She gave him a sharp look. "It could be a trap." "Maybe," he said, "but even predators know when it's time to choose survival over pride." Hours later, on the shattered moon of Vexhar's Hollow, the two met in an abandoned Terran Ford outpost, scorched during the war culling centuries ago. Dust and rust clung to ancient steel. A half-destroyed flag still fluttered weakly in low gravity. Reese stood alone beside a long-dead beacon. When Nadrin arrived, his scaled armor gleamed under the twin suns, tail low in a sign of reluctant respect. "You chose an old battlefield," Nadrin hissed in a low growl. "I wanted you to remember what we used to be," Reese replied. "I never forgot." They stood in silence. The distant hum of atmosphere filters the only sound. "Why now?" Reese asked. "You sat silent for weeks." Nadrin flexed his clawed hands. "Because we were waiting, watching. The Council promised a security, balance, peace. But they have become rot. Their decisions, their secrets." His golden eyes narrowed. "You expose what many suspected but fear to speak. And what do the Trakin want?" Reese asked. "Not alliance," Nadrin said bluntly. "Not yet, but understanding. Information. A chance to decide our next move with eyes fully open." Reese tossed him a secure data cube. "Everything we pulled from Sundar Prime. Encrypted. Unaltered." Nadrin caught it without blinking. "We're not here to conquer," Reese added. "We're here to correct a record, and anyone who stands in the way of that becomes part of the lie." The Trakin bowed his head slightly. "You fight like beasts, but you speak like judges." "We remember what it's like to be hunted," Reese said, "and we remember what it takes to stop the hunt." Without another word, Nadrin turned and disappeared into the low fog. Back on the Revenant, Reese debriefed Vesta. "They won't commit," she said, scanning the log. "Not yet." "No," he agreed. "But when the next system burns, they'll pick a side." Vesta hesitated. "There's more." She pulled up a new transmission. Intercepted Council chatter. "They tried to have you assassinated." Reese raised an eyebrow. "When?" 2 nights ago. A cloaked nanospore delivery drone. Failed due to shielding upgrades we installed last cycle." He said nothing, just stared at the screen. Then, "Who authorized it?" She brought up the metadata tag. Executive Priority Alpha, Vorth Kazareth. Within the bowels of the dying Council structure, Vorth watched the galaxy turn against him. Systems once loyal had gone silent. Trade corridors had fractured. Civil unrest bloomed across border worlds. The Freck, Drillii, and now even the Zarn had ceased Council-tied payments. He stared at a projection of Earth's expanding influence. It pulsed like a spreading fire, slow, methodical, precise. Humanity hadn't just declared war. They had shifted the center of gravity in the galaxy. His aide approached. "The vote to remove you reaches quorum in 2 days." Vorth didn't turn. "Then we move first." "How?" He turned, eyes burning with desperation. "Leak false files. Make it seem the humans fabricated Sundar Prime. Trigger civil uprisings where they've gained sympathy. Turn their allies against them. And if it doesn't work? Vor smiled, sharp and hollow. Then we bury them under the illusion they created. The next day, Earth's allies began receiving doctor files, deepfakes suggesting human tampering, re-engineered battle logs, even falsified audio of Reese giving execution orders for civilians. But humanity had seen this coming. Within hours, the Revenant broadcasted an unedited stream of the entire Sindar Prime operation, cross-referenced with quantum signatures and verified by a coalition of neutral AI historians from Enolar synth worlds. The disinformation collapsed before it even found footing. But the betrayal was clear. They won't stop, Vesta said quietly. They're too scared of what we represent now. Reese looked at her. Then we make fear work for us. Later that night, Reese stood in the observation deck, staring at the stars. The war wasn't just about weapons or battles. It was about the narrative. For centuries, Earth had been painted as the violent child of the galaxy, tamed only by council law. Now, humanity had forced a new story into being, one where they were not the aggressors, but the auditors. A soft chime echoed behind him. Admiral, Nix, the ship's AI, said. Incoming message. Priority Omega. From the Freck. Reese turned, put it through. A moment later, the Freck ambassador appeared in a low-resolution feed, antennae twitching with urgency. We intercepted a private council transmission, the Freck said. It references protocol cleansing, a full-scale attack on Earth. Not a battle, a purge. Reese's expression hardened. When, for days, fleet mobilization under dark route protocols. No official declaration. They want to erase you before the council vote. The screen blinked out. Reese turned to the intercom. Sound general alert. All fleets to red posture. Orders. Vesta's voice responded instantly. Reese looked out at the stars once more. We end this. Permanently. Across Earth's command centers, across colonies, outposts, listening stations and stealth destroyers, the message repeated like a heartbeat. Protocol Dominion. Initiate strike package. The final chapter was beginning, not because Earth wanted it, but because they were ready for it. The Battle of Virex began in silence. No warning salvos. No ultimatums. Just thousands of ships converging in orbit around a barren moon lit by the faint glow of a dying star. On one side, the Council Armada, massive, ceremonial fleets designed more for intimidation than war. They gleamed with gold and silver plating, banners of 1,000 species projected proudly from their hulls. On the other, humanity's war machines, matte black dreadnoughts, angular destroyers, and fast-strike cruisers cloaked in silence. No banners, no pageantry, just purpose. Admiral Kalen Reese stood on the bridge of the TCS Revenant, armored, calm, eyes locked on the tactical display. All fleet wings report in, Vesta said, her voice clipped and steady. Outpost 7 through 12 confirmed engaged. Forward drones mapping council formations now. They're holding a tight triad configuration, typical for defense, not offense. Because they don't expect us to attack first, Reese murmured. They think we'll wait. Vesta nodded. They think wrong. Above the moon of Virex, weapons charged. The Council's lead warship, the Judicator's Light, sent out a transmission, a final offer. Admiral Reese, stand down. Submit to judgment by the Council High Tribunal. Surrender now, and Earth will be spared total annihilation. Reese didn't even blink. He walked to the communications bay, leaned in. His voice was quiet, firm, deliberate. You ordered the death of our people. You buried the truth. You framed peace as mercy and tyranny as balance. We're not here to surrender. We're here to end you. Then he cut the feed. In less than a minute, the first shots were fired, not by the Council, but by Earth. Human railguns tore through the void like lances of cold light, smashing to the Judicator's Light's outer hull before it could raise full shields. A moment later, 20 Terran stealth cruisers decloaked mid-grid and unleashed precision strikes on command vessels. The Council responded in confusion. Their formation split. Command chains faltered. Protocols clashed. Generals argued over whose authority to follow. Terran fleets didn't hesitate. They moved like a single organism, AI-assisted fire coordination, predictive maneuvering algorithms, encrypted quantum chatter impossible to intercept. The sky turned into a dance of fire and silence. Reese stood unmoving, watching the display. Every red flash on the screen marked a council loss. Blue symbols, human vessels, held formation unfazed. Weapon status, he asked. Pulse batteries green. Fusion lances cycling. Strike Group Delta breached inner ring, reporting minimal resistance. Vesta answered without turning. Then we push, Reese said. Hard. Fast. No retreat. On the surface of Irex's moon, human drop pods rained down like iron comets. Strike teams hit the council command, relay buried beneath the crust. Inside, High Executive Vorth Kazera directed the failing assault. How are they this coordinated, he snarled, gripping the edge of his war table. They've spent centuries simulating council tactics, one aide stammered. They predicted our formations before we even deployed. Then adapt. We can't. We're splintered. Our AI cores aren't compatible across species. Our encryption's being jammed. Half the fleet is blind. Vorth froze. They didn't prepare for war, he whispered. They prepared to end us. Then the roof above them exploded. Reese entered the command bunker 30 minutes later, flanked by 2 armored operatives. His rifle was slung low, his boots scorched with moon dust. His voice was almost quiet. It's over. Vorth, wounded and bleeding, raised his head. His arrogance had melted into disbelief. You had the proof, the support, you had momentum. Why come here yourself? Reese knelt in front of him. Because the galaxy needs to see this. He tapped a command on his wrist pad. Across systems, millions of screens lit up, holograms, ship dashboards, council chambers. All of them broadcasted the same scene. Vorth Kazera captured, surrounded, exposed. Reese spoke, the words not for Vorth, but for the galaxy. This is the man who ordered Norvis. 6 erased. This is the voice that silenced truth. He called it peace. He called it order. He stood slowly. We call what it is tyranny. The trial didn't last days. It didn't need to. Vorth confessed in front of 10 billion sentient beings. Not from guilt, but from a place of broken pride. When he finally said it, we feared Earth would rise again. No one was surprised. His execution was swift. But Reese didn't watch it. In the days that followed, the council dissolved. Entire systems declared neutrality, then slowly aligned with Terra. Old enemies fell silent. Others came forward, offering treaties not out of fear, but respect. Inside the Terran Command Assembly, President Elyon watched the galactic map shift in real time. She turned as Reese entered. Is it done? She asked. He nodded. And now? We rebuild, he said, but not as rulers. Elyon raised an eyebrow. You led this war, Kalen. You won it. Reese looked tired, more than he let on. We didn't fight to control the galaxy, he said. We fought to remind it that truth can't be buried forever. She nodded slowly. And if they forget again? He looked at the stars outside the window. Then we'll remind them, as many times as it takes. In the far reaches of the galaxy, deep beyond old war lines, a child on a forgotten mining colony watched the last broadcast of Vorth's trial. He turned to his father and asked, Are the humans monsters? His father, a Drilii refugee, stared at the screen. No, he said. They just stopped pretending they weren't watching. In the shadows beyond known space, others listened. Quiet voices. Old powers. They had laughed when Earth bowed its head. They weren't laughing now, because Terra had returned, and it hadn't come to ask permission.